Of course, if you didn't know, I hope you knew, we're only about 5 days away from tax day, and to dig into everything that you definitely should know, I'm pleased to be joined yet again by Mattie Duppler, the senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union. And Mattie, normally this is not the time that people would have to worry about taxes. I guess it's a gift that it comes a little bit later in the year this year. But what should people know about filing this time around on July 15th, and what's different this time around?
Yeah, so dubious holiday that we're about to observe here with tax day falling on July 15th this year. This, of course, is a result of coronavirus. So let me work backwards, Zach. The thing that has always been the case when it comes to the tax filing deadline is that you have to pay if you think you owe. Even if you need an extension, you're not quite ready to file your taxes, you've got to pay what you think you might be owing on those taxes, even if they aren't done yet. That is still the case. You can file for an extension on Wednesday. That'll kick you all the way to October. Now, a couple different things that are happening though, right? We're still in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic. The assumption, the base case from the IRS was that the summer months would show a little bit of a reprieve on the infection rate and we'd have a little bit better handle on what's happening in the economy. That certainly doesn't seem to be the case. Remember with the CARES Act that the IRS was the agency that was in charge of putting those stimulus checks out the door to Americans, which ended up helping quite a bit as Americans weathered the initial shutdowns because of the coronavirus. Well, now Congress is talking about potentially doing that again. So my organization, National Taxpayers Union, along with a number of other tax advocacy firms have said, hey, listen, why don't we just delay those payments once again? Instead of having Americans send their money to the Treasury only for Treasury to send it back with another round of stimulus checks, it makes sense to keep what would be about $1 trillion in private wealth in the hands of Americans as we continue to wade through the reopenings at the state and local level.
And when we talk about, I guess, the delay here, I guess that's given people more time to maybe take advantage of some last minute tips here to kind of try and reduce the amount of taxes that they would normally pay. If there were any last minute tips there for filers who I guess have really taken as much time as they can here, if we're 5 days away, what you would tell them to say, look, here's your last chance to really put some good practice to use.
Well, yeah. So remember, the reason that this delay was instituted was to give particularly business owners, but also American families, some liquidity and a buffer as they headed into months where potentially their businesses were shut down for weeks or for months. So people who are paying now have to pay businesses have to pay their Q1 and their Q2 payments, both of which were delayed. You also have individuals who are going to be paying their individual taxes for the first time for this year. And if you are someone who's looking ahead at next year, that's really where you want to be looking at your tax situation now. Because there's been so much uncertainty for taxpayers in these last couple of months, it's likely your tax situation is going to be very different next year. So if you're thinking you're going to get a refund this year, you can always apply that to next year to try and blunt some of the circumstances. If you were in a weird tax situation where you think you're going to be making more these couple of months than you would have the months absent the coronavirus crisis, I would suggest looking at that refund and maybe using it to pay down your tax liability for next year.
I mean, when we think about how quickly sometimes this always sneaks up on people, it's going to be a lot quicker when you think about shifting back to April again. So important to keep all that in mind. But Mattie Duppler, a senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union, appreciate you taking the time to break that down. Have a great weekend, man.